Okay, so good afternoon, actually good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you're from. Thank you for joining us today for our exhibit number 5 with Radhika Patnala, and I'm super excited to have her join us today. And so my name is Faniel Wendy. I'm the Chief Curator of the New Society Art Gallery based in Boston in the STEM Advocacy Institute. And so at the Institute, we focus on connecting science and society. That's our passion. And the question there that we're asking is, how do we do that? What are the vehicles that we can increase access between science and society? The gallery is one expression of that. We're using, exploring at least how art can connect the two domains. And so by engaging professionals and experts like Radhika Patnala, whose work I've just been so excited since I even came across her work through STEM peers. And so today it's going to be an opportunity for us to really get in and have a conversation about that. And so the New Society, as I mentioned, we are really exploring that bridge between science and society using art. You can follow us on Twitter, New Society Art, and visit our website at newsocietyart.space. Joining us today as well is Anita Kenny, our new managing curator. You can give a wave, Anita, hey. She just recently joined us, helping us manage and continue to grow. We're relatively new. We're very much experimental, okay? The experiment here is how can we explore this connection between science and society through art? So if you look through history, we have tried different modalities and we continue to iterate and grow. So thank you for being patient with us. And so I want to first do a land acknowledgements before we formally get going. So we're based in Massachusetts. And so this we do at the beginning of every event as way of a recognition for the indigenous people that were originally here as well. So let me just read this and then we will get going. So where we're meeting virtually today is the original homelands of the Mashpee, Wampug, Aquinnah, Wampanoag, Nipmuc, and the Massachusetts tribal nations. We acknowledge the painful history of genocide and forced removal from this territory, and we honor and respect the many diverse indigenous people still connected to this land on which we gather. Let us also take a moment to consider the legacy of colonization embedded within the technologies, structures, and ways of thinking we use every day. Our equipment and internet are not available in many indigenous communities, and the technologies central to art leave significant carbon footprints that contribute to the changing climate. This disproportionately affects indigenous people worldwide. I invite you to join me in acknowledging all of this and our shared responsibility so that we may consider our roles in reconciliation, decolonization, and allyship. And so with that, I formally would like to introduce Radhika Patnala. So she's a neuroscientist by training and now based in Germany and is the founder of Sci-Illustrate. And actually she decided to start this our own illustration company to help researchers and institutions communicate science in a more visual and comprehensible way. I met Radhika through STEM Peers. It's a community, online community on Facebook, wonderful organization whom we collaborate extensively and continue to do so. And I looked through her work and I was inspired. Okay, and I'll leave it at that in saying that I knew immediately that I wanted her to have a conversation with her in this public matter and learn more about how
for the world to see.
for the world to see and learn more about how she does what she does and what inspires her, right? How does she explore this connection between science and society through her work? And so with that, Radhika, welcome. Just some housekeeping for everybody. You can raise your hand at any time. We'll be manning the station. We'll allow you to ask a question to Radhika or myself or Anita. And also you can type your question in as well. That's perfectly fine, okay? This is a conversation and you're all invited to join us. Radhika, welcome.
Thank you, Fanuel. Thank you so much for having me here. And it's truly a privilege to be part of this initiative that you've started. Um, should I share my screen?
Yeah, go ahead. You can, yeah, you should be able to
Okay.
do so.
Okay, so hello everyone, and welcome to this webinar. and so, what I thought would be interesting for us to do today is to dive into a work in progress project that I've been working on uh, for probably the last few weeks. This project is called Cell Space 2020, and it is an initiative or a brainchild of David S. Goodsell. And many of you might already know him. He's almost like the godfather of molecular visualizations because he makes these beautiful, intricate watercolor paintings of biological systems. And so we are essentially doing a collaborative project with him, me and many other artists from all around the world, where we really think about how do we visualize COVID-19, the scientific aspects of it, and also different ways of visualizing the concept itself. And all the artwork that will be produced for this would be a part of another exhibit, which is the Cell Space exhibit from David Goodsell. Um, Now, jumping into what you're going to be watching me make for the next hour is a project that I call COVID Dreams. And you would understand why I have termed it like this. Um, so when I was given the when I was given the option of being a part of this project, uh, I was very much inclined towards exploring the concept of COVID, but also having give it like a more society oriented base. And so I thought that COVID dreams as a concept would give me or allow me the freedom to really explore different kind of ideas or visuals that could be related to this theme, but also do it in a very abstract way. And so, what I'm going to do now is show you for the first time ever before. I'm going to show you the work that I've already created, and I'm going to be creating the last piece of artwork for this series right now in front of you with you all. So, this was the first picture that I made for this series, and it's really very playful. It's very abstract, playful, and what I was hoping to capture with this is really a different way of thinking about COVID, because there are a lot of visuals surrounding the virus out there, but there are not so many depictions of the what this entire pandemic means to a person on a personal level. And so I was very interested in exploring this abstract, fun way of depicting something very serious. um Faniel, you also wanted me to speak a bit more about my journey and in general, so I think really skipped over my introduction.
You can fuse it in, Radhika. Just as you're telling us these stories, you tell us
Mhm.
the journey. What is inspiring you, and
Okay, maybe I keep it for when I'm drawing.
then for the questions that people are dropping in, we'll find a time where I'll sneak them in there to Radhika so that she can ask us. Some of
Mhm.
them are technical, some of them are more commentary. So we're gonna get to them. Don't worry, Radhika.
Okay. Okay, perfect. So this was essentially where I started with, and you will see as I share more pictures, you will see how the project has progressed and how my ideas are kind of moving towards a certain direction. So I started very vague necessarily because I don't really know what this is. It could be the gut or it could be someone's tongue. I have no idea at this point. Then I moved on to something else, like thinking about this obsession we have with how COVID spreads, and it's just the whole feeling of being scared, being around people now, because you don't know what's gonna happen. The next picture I made for this series is honestly my favorite one. I don't know, my mom doesn't like it, but this one is Faniel, can you, what do you see?
It looks like, wait, are we someone's mouth, right? At the bottom. The that's all I see.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's about it. That's about it. But I would think of this as a mask. At least that's how I kind of imagined it. So this is basically the mouth inside. So, someone's mouth, yeah, on the other side of the mask, essentially. Um, so I also took like the opportunity when I was developing this series. I also took the opportunity to play with different kind of, uh, I don't know, different kind of illustration techniques and uh, what I could use to depict like different things. So I wanted to try and find another way of drawing endothelial cells in a blood vessel and um, the virus particles. So the virus particles are like an essential theme or like an essential object that feature in all of these posts. Um, at this point, I was moving away from larger aspects and going more into biology because that is my expertise, that's my interest, and I also wanted to kind of play around um, with the molecular mechanisms of COVID-19 and how I can I explore those. So what you see here is essentially like a soup of RNA with other proteins. And at the same time, I think it was interesting for me to balance the abstract versus informational nature of this series because my intention with the series was to make it extremely abstract. The next, I go even deeper. So here, if you imagine the RNA being all loose, I go deeper into how the RNA might be packaged inside COVID. And so you have interactions of the RNA with the nucleoprotein, and then it being packaged very similar to how chromatin is usually packaged. And so it was just interesting for me. Then I kind of moved out again. So you zoom out a little, and then you think of how the virus, like the subsurface structure of the virus and how its proteins interact with the world outside. And then if you zoom out even more, this was something I made where you have COVID. Faniel, what do you see?
So at this point, hmm, it's probably attacking something. So like virus is there. Yeah, I don't know. The background is kind of hard. I'm losing context. Anita, what do you see?
Well, in the upper left corner, that reminds me of the sun, actually, which is kind of interesting.
Interesting. Swati, what do you think? You raise your hand.
I think it's the sun on the upper left corner.
Mhm.
Maybe I think I don't know. I mean, I imagine this as COVID taking over everything. Kind of. I mean, just a guess.
No, you're somewhat right. I mean, so I did. So this is like all of the things that I made in this entire series were really like very explorative. So I would make something and then kind of build on top of that. And so you're right in the way that uh, I think the giveaway for this being like the Earth's sun is basically the moon, at least for me. Like the moon is the tiny nugget of information.
I think that's a good photo. So in this way, I want to take a quick pause here, and so as we delve into the different processing, right? Now take us through your story. How did you get to doing this kind of work, right? I think it's a good segue to take a pause as we're learning more about how visualizing things. how did you get to be exploring this type of work, science society, using art, design? What got you here?
I think my journey, I can stop screen sharing for just a bit. I think my journey into being into design and art really started even before my scientific journey. So my mom was an interior designer, and I basically grew up around her practicing interior design in the way that she would make these large watercolor landscapes and like very perspective drawings of entire buildings and stuff. And then she would be using all these different softwares at home like AutoCAD and like really complicated stuff. And so eventually, while I was growing up, I spent a lot of time around graphic design software. And I think that's how I kind of got initiated into the whole art and design side of the world. And but by the time I reached the time to decide what professional education am I going to go for, I was very much interested in science, especially life sciences. I think it was during that time when I think Time magazine published an article about human cloning.
Interesting.
Way back, and I still remember, like, because my dad used to subscribe to the Time magazine, I remember like latching onto this one article about human cloning and getting like hyper interested in it and presenting like a essay on it, like a verbal essay on the topic of human cloning in my classroom. So I think that was kind of like the turning point of me basically going very hard on science.
I see. And then the aspect of visualizing things.
Mm-hmm.
Why was that important to you, at least, taking science and making it visual for everybody?
Mm-hmm. For me, like the whole training of being a scientist. So during bachelor's, we would have classes where we would have to like draw things to depict it, like, how does the retina look, or the biochemistry pathways. It was never digital back then, and then everything you would have to make, you would make like in your notebook or sketchbook. So I think the whole initiation into, I was already interested in arts in the sense of I would already do watercolors and I would already start with pencil sketching and stuff. But the whole transition really matured when I was doing PhD, because PhD is a place where you're really exploring new concepts, new ideas, and especially like very deep in the realm of life sciences, which you may or may not be able to visualize. Yeah. And
Right.
so it's easy to draw a plant because you can see it, you can observe it. But when I started my PhD in neuroscience and in molecular biology, especially like molecular biology and epigenetics, I think I came to a place where all of a sudden I was dealing with concepts that were very difficult to visualize, except as small dots on a confocal microscope. So I think that was the time when I like dived really deep into visualization and like honed. I was already practicing the skills, like the digital skills required to do digital illustrations by then. But then the whole idea of visualizing your science really fortified during my PhD.
Got it. Because I think that's that finding that initial spark, right, that keeps you going to eventually formally starting an organization, right, a company, right, to be doing this. I think is fascinating. So Radhika, do you want to continue with your couple of slides, because I know the exciting demo is coming up later. So I want to make sure you have time for that, and we can go back into more Q&A in a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Tell me if I'm sharing this right screen now. Do you see my PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay. So so this was basically one of the pictures that I made, and now we are closing in to the end of the set, where this is the most recent picture that I have made, which is essentially following the journey of this picture. And so I've kind of zoomed in again, and how I visualize this is basically the spike proteins on the surface of the virus. And so what I wanted to make as the next, maybe I should, what I want to make next is I want to change perspective. So instead of looking at the spike proteins from the top, I would like to look at it at the same level as the spike protein. So imagine yourself as being on the virus and looking at the spike proteins. And so that is what I plan to make now.
Cool. This will be
Yeah.
really, yeah, let's go for it. I think, I think it's really cool when you took us on a journey. You just told us now we're looking from the top. Now imagine you're looking from the side. I can imagine you do this a lot in your work, right? You're always trying to look at a different perspective, right?
Mhm.
And thinking about the viewer, challenging them, right? To see, what do you see? Hopefully they see it this way. But yeah, I'm excited to, and for everyone, hopefully, to see this action in action.
I think we're doing pretty good on time.
Yeah,
we have half an hour more, right?
Yeah, we have plenty of time. Don't worry.
Half an hour to make this. Now that's going to be a challenge. Okay, so I'm going to basically start now. And so what I usually use for this kind of, specifically this kind of style of illustrative drawing, is Adobe Illustrator, because it is a vector-based software and it's very easy to get that kind of style using this program. Few important things before I start. I need to know how the spike protein looks like. So let's just Google.
That'll be my question. Like, where do you get your inspiration from, and who is, like, how do you know what it looks like, right?
Right?
Yeah.
But Google is your friend always. So, okay. So essentially, I need to get the knowledge of how to represent the spike protein, because remember, I don't want to get too detailed on it, but I also need like some kind of inkling of what I'm trying to make, at least in terms of shape and size and how it's positioned. So I kind of like this picture, because it's quite close to what I'm trying to make in terms of perspective. And it also helps that it's 3D. So I'm gonna pick this. And let's see. Let's keep it here. And the next thing I need to do is to bring the color palette that I'm using for this. It's very difficult to talk and think at the same time.
So why don't you just keep doing, and I'm gonna just high level. I think for audience here, this is, I think, part of the process we just don't get to see, right? As artists are working through their creative process, and in our last session with Sean, he was taking through this. He's a astrophotographer, and so he was taking us through how do you get to that final image where you can see that nebula and its beautiful colors and so forth. And I think that aspect of showing us the details was fantastic. Here, as you're watching Radhika sort of go through a process, I think that's the point here, is looking at those critical elements. And I think the question that I'm having right now are like, what is inspiring you, right? What is that genesis of the idea? I think the details perhaps don't even matter as much, but more on that journey, that initial spark, right, that gets you to the state. So but thank you again for just letting us in this, because this is something that we don't get to see at all. So
okay, so I'm obviously starting with a plain whiteboard, so it's really a mystery to me what we are going to make, but I'm going to follow my gut and
that's awesome.
make something for you guys in like the next 20 minutes.
And that's a fantastic, you following your gut, right? The white screen is so scary to look at, whether it's in Word or Illustrator.
I think what I find really helpful is not thinking too much about it.
Mm,
And I think that's really one of the greatest pieces of advice I can give anyone. Like, don't think so much.
yeah.
Just
And do you have the end in sight right now as you're making this, or?
not really. I mean, so I don't know. Like, so I know a few things about this, right? I know that I know the perspective that I'm looking at. So in my mind's eye, I know that if I'm looking at it this way, then certain things need to be in proportion. Like, for example, I think the easiest way to start off is to establish the base of the picture, because that is where that will give you the idea of space and distance.
Mm,
So I'm gonna try. So essentially, things get smaller farther away, and they get larger as it comes closer to you. So the first few strokes are really like to get the general base in order.
that's cool.
And then I'm gonna try to make whatever's farther away like smaller or tighter. And then that would already give you a bit of an idea of the space that we're working with.
Yeah, I think I can see it taking shape actually
Mhm.
nicely. Anita, feel free to add any commentary or questions.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I love what you said, Radhika, about I don't think about it, because that's seeming so contradictory to being a scientist, right? Which is so much about being up in one's head and being cerebral. I imagine I'm not one, but and so it's a neat contrast that art provides this opportunity to maybe turn the thinking mind off and let something else
Mhm.
emerge.
Yeah, that's a good point. The energy, right? In terms of like what is inspiration? Because as a scientist, yes, you're very much thinking, okay, what's the question? How is this going to look like? What experiment do I need to do here? And
Right.
here, it's a feeling. It's a gut feeling. It's inspiration. It's many things all together at once. And that's the beauty about this.
Mhm. So most of the time, I'm always playing catch up between what I want to make and what my skill levels permit. And so another another really interesting part of the artist journey is to really like learn so that you can keep pace with what you want to make.
Mm.
That's right. That's right.
And it's always like a game of catch up, really.
See, and do you work alone, or do you sometimes have this work like a team of people that help you?
It depends really on the project, the complexity of the project. So if it's something that I can handle and it's something that falls within my expertise, then I do it myself.
Hmm.
And if the project is quite large and with a tight deadline, then uh, I set up a team with the kind of expertise that I'm looking for to help me out.
Got it.
So here at the moment, I'm really focusing on getting the base right, because once the base is right, then it'll help me put all the elements in place on top of that.
Got it.
So I've also pulled up my older picture here because there are some overlapping elements here which I kind of need to mimic here.
Yeah, and you can feel the pressure that Radhika is under here, as she's normally this live in front of people, right? but I think, again, thank you so much for letting us in your process. This is
Okay, don't thank me just yet. We'll see what I can make. Let's see.
yeah, at least in my mind, I can see it slowly beginning to take shape, and so forth.
So what I've done now is I've already laid like the basic structure of it, and then you're gonna see how it comes together as I start doing the fill-in work. So the first thing the first thing I really have to do is close these parts in case I have to fill them. So let's close these. So what I'm using now is a software called Adobe Illustrator, and this is really like the best tool you can have in terms of vector illustrations, handling vector illustrations. And this tool is usually used by like illustration professionals all over the world, and it's a fairly well-known tool. But why I like using this, and the point I want to highlight is that we as scientists, we end up spending so much time working on the wrong tools for the wrong job. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like it's almost like we try to make PowerPoint do things that it's just not built to do. And it is sad because the time of a scientist or a lab leader is extremely valuable. And these are like highly skilled and highly paid workers. And so for an institute, I think it's very important to think about how their people spend their time. And if a person has to spend 5 hours trying to make a scientific illustration in PowerPoint, as opposed to 30 minutes on Illustrator, then it just makes business sense to train people in the right tools.
Yeah, and so because you do this as part of, you have scientific illustration, Sci-Illustrate, and then you have this personal, right, side of things that you also do by yourself, right? Just, I don't know if you, have submitted this work for other galleries, for example, to be viewed. How do you balance the two?
The two aspects, as in the professional scientific illustration part of the business, and
the two, one is communicate, I guess, scientific concepts, and the other is just your personal, like this passion of yours, right? Trying to showcase your work. So I think it's interesting to be doing that. The way I think of it is like the scientists who are doing their research right in the lab, and then they're talking about science outreach, right? And that component, I feel like your images can have a huge, powerful science outreach component. At least they have the potential to. So that's why I'm curious, how do you navigate that space?
I mean, it's very interesting that you bring that up, because I did, on some level, when I started Sci-Illustrate, that was also one of the sub goals of what I was trying to build, which is making science inspired visuals that could like incite curiosity among folk who haven't had the privilege to do a PhD in science, or who haven't really followed the path of a scientist and get inspired the way we get a chance to be inspired. And not everyone has access to a confocal microscope and is able to appreciate like the beauty of biological systems the way we have had. So I think for me, it was very important to, in one way, it is also a matter of like self-expression, of like sharing my thoughts or my feelings or whatever it is with the world. But on the other hand, I also wanted to create visuals that could be used to in some way provide a window for non-scientists to see things that we can see, or experience at least the world how we have had the opportunity to experience.
And the key word there you just mentioned is experience, and that an image that you create can have the potential to make someone experience something,
Mhm.
right, that they may not have never seen before. And I think that's very powerful. And as an artist, you're sort of sitting there, you're thinking about that experience, but you don't know how people are going to react, right? And that's what artists usually say, I don't know how people are going to respond to this, right?
Mhm.
Some people may respond this way or that way. In your case, do you always do you have a specific experience you want people to feel, or is it open-ended?
It's really open-ended. I mean, I know an artist is to, I mean, it again depends from project to project.
Right.
And at least for something like this, like something that I'm making right now, I think for me it's more valuable on how other people experience it. Like what feelings or ideas do they get from it? Are they insulted because I'm using such bright colors for something so serious and something which has impacted the world so badly? You know, it's really like a it's really like a perspective thing. I mean, it's hard to know. But I mean, for some things I am very um intentional in how I want people to view it, and other things I let it loose.
Mm. Yeah, just keep it open-ended. You're right. It just depends on the project and view. I think that for me, I'm a macro photographer. So when I'm always trying to go out there in the world and trying to take photos of this, I'm looking for the alternate perspective, right? The side that most people don't see.
Mhm.
I'm after that, and how it makes him feel, I have no idea. All I know is how it makes me feel. And so I want to bring in the other folk with me and let them experience it too, as they look at something that is
Mhm.
macro in
Yeah.
structure. So, but in your case, you're actually making it, and I think that's beautiful.
And I think also, I mean, the role of the artist is bifold. You know, on one hand, the artist can't really control what others experience when they look at the art, and on the other hand, it's also about like sharing with the world what you think. And so it like these conversations are fairly complex. And then eventually I don't think really the artist nor the viewer has control over how the art is interpreted at the end of the day, so it becomes like its own living object.
That's right. That's right.
I
Yeah.
think
So where are we right now? Let's go back on the journey. Your the structure is really coming together very nicely, I think.
yeah, now I have to realign my thought process.
Yeah. How long does a typical image for you take to make on average?
Mm-hmm. But if I know what I'm making, then it's obviously much faster.
Mm.
If I don't know what I'm making, then it's really like a matter of days or months, or for my personal projects, like many of my personal projects, which I've also like shared for downloads and stuff on the website, on the Sci-Illustrate website, I think many of them are a work of almost like 3 months, because I had the initial idea, and then it just took me some time to get it to a place where I was happy with it, happy enough to like stop working on it and close it, essentially.
Impressive. So we have a question here from Vinita. So I'm curious, after you mentioned about color choice, was it a conscious decision to use such colors and not red palette, in which we generally see the virus, or it's just happened organically? Just curious.
The color palette to see the virus, that is really like a human made thing. Like whenever we see the virus, we see it really through the electron microscope, which is essentially like the virus itself is maybe most probably colorless. And then so whatever colors you do relate with the virus are really someone else's idea. And I think it's very important to be cognizant of that.
Mhm.
And so if it is someone's idea, if it's the idea of the illustrator, the 3D illustrator who put the picture out there in the first place, then we come back to the whole thing of the virus can be of any color then. And so it can essentially be related with any other color. The question of, so then you get to ask, right, as an artist, then you get to ask, what feeling am I trying to get in the viewer when they are looking at what I'm making? And I think that is the crux of the question, because it's almost like at that point you can really consciously decide what do you want the viewer to feel like. If you want them to feel sad, or if you want this whole thing to be a very serious conversation, then you would like gravitate towards colors which get that effect. And that is really like the artist's choice. It's the artistic freedom. And so the only difference with this particular series was I chose otherwise. Like mental health is is like is something that got highlighted quite a bit during this whole pandemic. And when I was creating something for it, I made a conscious decision to just choose happy colors.
I think so. So Sean basically kind of answered that question as well in our last session, because when you look at the nebula and so forth, their color distributions, sometimes it's really the artist's feeling, and we saw him just edit the colors to the right, what he felt was just right. There are some standard palettes, of course, what color oxygen is, right, to hydrogen and helium. But after some point, it's the artist takes over and they showcase what they think, at least to them, what it should look like and what it makes them feel like. So, but yeah, you're right. The virus is colorless. People are, whatever makes it look, whatever way you want it to, color-wise, that is.
Yeah, I find this whole concept very fascinating, because you can change human perceptions with the use of color, and that's really remarkable.
Yeah, exactly. As you continue to work on this, there was a question earlier just about, do you have any tips for those people who are looking to get into this field and doing this? Are there specific formal opportunities that you know about, or is it really practice and like any sort of tips?
Which context again?
I guess in the context of like science illustration, I guess, right? Because once you have the skill set, you can take it whether you want to go formally or even personally, right, as an artist. But were there formal mechanisms of which you took to get this training, or did you just acquire it organically over time?
The training, like my training for using this software, was a very organic and very long-term process. So why is this another layer? I started working with the software almost 15 years back, and I don't know why this is out here. I'm just gonna delete it. We don't need it. Yeah. So my personal journey with the software has been like extremely long and arduous, but there are ways to learn it. But then again, like it really depends on what kind of scientific illustrator do you want to be, and where are your strong areas. So one thing I have realized after being fairly long in this field is that the field is just starting to get attention, and so the opportunities really in the field are what you make of it. And that being said, I think there is also a lot of space for allowing new people with new ideas and new techniques or illustration styles to come in. I think also what's important to note is, do you want to be a scientific artist or a scientific illustrator? Because a scientific illustrator, the essential job of a scientific illustrator is to depict scientific processes accurately. And so if you want to be a scientific illustrator, then even more than having just software skills, I think one needs to hone on general general skills to process information, like process complex information, understand and solve like visual problems, or how to like basically solve basic problems, like how to convey a very complex piece of information in a simple way. And once you feel like you have an inkling of that skill, on the side you can kind of dabble in the software you like.
I think yeah, I think it did. And I'm looking at the image, and it's I think, yeah, Anita, I don't know if you have any thoughts. It's really fascinating to that view, right? You told us you had rotated us, right? The side view, and it's really, I can see it now, at least.
It's become wonderfully three-dimensional as well, even though it's in a 2D form.
Yeah.
You've made a new macrocosm out of a microcosm. That's how I feel about it.
Kind of cool, right? I thought this was an interesting experiment to try.
And that's a key word there, experimentation, right? You just don't know where it's going to take you. So I think that's great. Let's see if there are a couple of questions here. And so, any question from Swati in terms of, what are the typical struggles that you have faced in reaching kind of where you are right now, or even maybe in the processing, right? I think it looks wonderful and so forth, but what have been the typical struggles that you've faced in your work?
Mm-hmm. I think one of the one of the most interesting struggles that I have faced is really like the struggle of an artist, which I didn't really knew much about before. And I think the struggle of an artist is always to like try and communicate what they're feeling. And as I said, like then matching that struggle with your skill levels, and basically marrying everything together. So I think the struggle of the artist I face every day, because there's a lot of uncertainty in honing down on an idea, and if it's the right representation, is it ready to be let out into the world? There are all these interesting questions surrounding these kind of things.
Yeah. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's right.
And honestly, I wasn't expecting. I think I never gave it enough credit when I was not in the field, but it is a real thing. And it's almost like some days I really feel like I'm a PhD student again, and I'm I'm like trying to navigate the waters of uncertainty.
Yeah, the answer definitely is complicated. Go ahead, Radhika.
Yeah. Apart from that, I think are you expecting a certain struggle? Whoever asked the question that I should answer.
So this is, let's see Swati. She's still here. Swati, do you want to expand on your question?
Yes. Thanks for giving me over. I just have some questions, Radhika, because I am in my final year of PhD as of now, and I love science illustration. And I'm really looking forward to take my career into science illustration. So, and also, of course, I have to think about financially as well. So I'm really worried about that, because I know some artists who always have these problems. Like, of course, I mean, and I want to make this as my career and maybe leave science behind now. So that will be like more of a question, like how stable it will be financially.
Yeah, that's always a thing. So okay, so first of all, you are not leaving science behind if you take this career. In fact, you'll be even more closer to science, and your
Yeah,
horizons are
I
gonna
do.
your horizons are gonna explode, because depending on who you're making a scientific illustration for, you will have basically 2 days to understand as much as you can about their topic and their
Yeah.
field. So this being away from science is a fallacy. Then, as far as it being financially viable, uh, the interesting thing about that is that making your business financially viable is does I mean, of course, this is assuming that you have enough, uh, that you have polished your skills enough to make a product which someone will buy from you. And I think that is it's very important for you to get that clarity
Mhm.
of, are your skills matching to a place where you can compete in the market and create a product which someone is going to pay you good money for.
Yeah.
And that is really like a more retrospective question. You have to kind of do your research and what exists out there, and really be realistic about your place in the giant ecosystem of things. Once you solve that problem and you're confident that your skills level, or at least your ability or willingness to learn on the job, is sound enough, then you basically have to learn how to run a business. Because unfortunately, the whole there are not so many full-time jobs for a scientific illustrator. There might be some institutes, but they usually have maybe one or two positions open for a scientific illustrator, and it's basically like one person catering to the entire institute. So if you look at that, if you at least look at that kind of numbers, then there are not so many positions for a scientific illustrator out there, which means that if you want to choose this profession, then you're essentially making a conscious choice to become a freelancer.
Mhm.
And becoming a freelancer really comes with its like own battle. That being a freelancer is really not easy. And um, I think it's very important to be um, realistic about having a financial buffer before you make that professional decision.
Thank you so much, Swati, for that question, because I think it is an important one. Whether you're an artist, like you just trying to survive in that domain, or becoming a science illustrator. And I think your separation of the two was really important earlier. That you're illustrating actual factual information, right? Versus the other side where it can be more artistic in nature, right? So great. So, oh my God, this is looking fantastic now. Where are we? How are we looking on time-wise here? Yeah, it's amazing. In 30 minutes, this has come to life like this.
I'm happy about that. I wasn't so confident about that happening.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I think it's
I feel like I still did not address Swati's real question.
mm,
I just want to add that you are in your last year of PhD and you're thinking of this field. I think one of the most important things for you to do now is to establish a financial backup, because I think it's important for you to be confident that you can sustain yourself for a certain amount of time, irrespective of how you go ahead. And so buy yourself some time to explore the field and try it out. Try it out for 6 months or a year,
mm,
and then decide if this is the career for you or not.
yeah. And so she added that since every field requires experience. Oh yeah, I think she answered this earlier about the internships and companies which give opportunities to newbie science illustrators, the science masters, and science background. So I would like to pause on that question because I think it's taking us on a more professional realm a little bit there, Swati. And I would encourage you to contact Radhika, email Radhika directly, and set up a time and chat with her really and talk more about those opportunities. Because I think that's a really important question. And it's as more and more, as Radhika mentioned, that this field the spotlight is on it now, right? The spotlight is on it. More people want to get in. I think that's definitely a need in the community. But thank you for bringing that up. Radhika, there's another question regarding, are there any other tools outside Illustrator that people can, if they want to sort of start trying to do this, are there any other tools?
Yeah, I can talk about that.
Okay.
So Illustrator is a paid tool. There are other tools in the market for doing vector illustrations, and Inkscape is one of the free tools. And Affinity Designer is another tool, which is cheaper than Illustrator. I'm not entirely sure about the functionalities of it because my experience is contained within Illustrator, but worth exploring if you want to get your hands dirty.
I think that's a good thing, right? You don't have to spend hundreds of dollars, right, to going on these platforms.
Okay, so we are somewhere now. Something is happening.
Something is there. So what are you doing right now? Like as you sort of come towards the end of it, what are you checking? What are you?
So now I have like a small issue of the placements of my bright objects because I kind of want them to be contained like as light source, where the light source is. So I'm essentially imagining this to be the light source. And so my bright object would be nicer if it's contained within the bounds of these objects.
Got it.
Yeah. So I'm going to move a few things around now. Maybe decrease the opacity of it. And
most of your work is static, right? You don't do any moving images.
I do moving images as well. So
you do them as well. Okay.
We have a very nice passion project in the company, and it's called Women in Science Initiative or whatever. And what we do there is every week we release a story about one woman in science. And I have a team of artists and content editors, and we all together kind of put out like a small animated picture of a woman scientist along with a blog post.
Great.
It's been going on for like 2 years now, so we are quite proud of it.
Fantastic. Yeah.
That sounds like something that would be wonderful to share with children.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. I mean, you guys really try to visit the Women in Science page. It's like a publication on Medium, and it looks really beautiful.
And this is hosted through Sci-Illustrate?
Yes. It's like hyper speed drawing.
Time lapse.
All right. This really looks like a time lapse.
Just going to put the link on there for that. Here we go for everybody. Oh, sorry, I should put it to everybody. Here we go. For those of you, if you're still on there, click on the link there. That's the Women in Science Medium posting that Radhika just mentioned. I'm just looking at the time here, Radhika, and it was close to the end a little bit. This is, my goodness, I think from a blank screen, okay, blank screen, that's where we started, to this right now. I think that this is really amazing just to see the work come to life like this in a really short amount of time. So as we sort of wrap up towards the end, what are some of your, where are you taking this, moving forward, and these images, both on your personal side and then maybe a little bit touch on the company, or maybe even your thoughts about science and art in the future?
So, I mean, it's all really open. I don't know. I'm going with the flow. As far as this series is concerned, it's going to go on to self-space, and I'm going to release it under Creative Commons so everyone can freely use and share it as they please. Should I stop screen share now?
Yeah, you can, yeah, up to you can, yeah, you can stop it. It's fine.
Okay, this is the final reveal. This is what I was able to make in the half an hour, but
Can you-
awesome.
Can you zoom in a little bit so we can see the full screen? Yeah, perfect. Yay. That's cool.
Yeah, I'm gonna stop tinkering on it now, but yeah, this is what we have as of now.
You made it. You made it. Yay.
Okay, I'm gonna stop screen share and then we can talk for a bit.
Yeah.
Um,
So the future.
the future. Yeah, it's a very profound question. I don't know. I usually go with the flow. As far as, but one thing is for certain, that we have moved our workshop. Like, we have something called a Sci-Illustrate masterclass, where we basically organize it for scientists to teach them Illustrator and teach them basically scientific illustration in the context of the life science industry or in the context of their science field. And so the latest update on that sphere is that we have moved it to virtual. So now we can do it virtually for institutes and universities. So if anyone is interested in learning from Sci-Illustrate, then please hit up your administrator and get in touch with us. So that's the workshop end of things. But as far as the company is concerned, I do see it growing. And so there is a need for a lot of scientific illustrators for the world, because science is getting really complex by the day, and like all the processes, the molecular systems that we are exploring and discovering every day are like so complex that we just need like a huge army of scientific illustrators good scientific illustrators to enter the field and help out researchers and scientists in trying to communicate their science more effectively.
Mm-hmm. And for you, what does impact mean for you? I guess in a broader societal sense with these illustrations. It's a tough question because impact is multi-dimensional. But I'm just curious if you thought about that, and what's your hope?
A personal impact for me was I was able to find something or some way to be useful to society in my own little small world.
Mm-hmm.
So that was like terms of personal impact. On the larger scale of things, I think I've been very privileged to be part of new teams, new companies, like be a part of teams all around the world, trying my giving my effort into helping them communicate their science, which eventually helps them grow. So this job is also very much a job of being a facilitator to other amazing things happening in the world. And I think you're like a essential cog in the wheel.
Right.
Or yeah, cog in the wheel. A cog is a wheel, right?
I think you got it right, and I think that's a really good place to sort of summarize our engagement today. We got to see some of the work you've done for the series that you're working on now, and we actually got to see the mechanics, actual art being made in front of us, and seeing that journey, and then you telling us about the impact and what you hope this will be. And I think you're right. We need more, right? This gap is there, and art, I think, has a huge role to play in multiple dimensions, right? Multiple dimensions. I think in other exhibits we've had dancers, we've had visual artists, and I think there's plenty of space for people who are looking to help us get science in society.
And this whole COVID thing has really like almost strengthened the need for art in the world,
Right.
or else we all would go insane because because the real world is too intense and too crazy. And I think we do all need to experience our lives as human beings with the freedom of creativity. So
That's absolutely right. Radhika, thank you so much. And for everybody, please stay tuned. We are going to be hosting another exhibit soon. We don't have a date yet, but we're going to continue exploring this theme. And we're going to have some of Radhika's work on our website, a different body of work. But definitely you can get to see multiple dimensions that she's exploring. I think that's just wonderful. You get to experiment, right? And I think the art of experimentation, I think, is really key here. And so we're excited that you'll be able to share that with us. And with that, thank you all. And thank you so much for joining us today.